Hey, are we live? We're live. Oh my goodness. We're here. And you're watching. This is amazing. Yo, let's just jump right into this. Have you heard? I'm sure you've heard. You've had to have heard. Let me lower my music a little bit. Man, Quincy Jones, he kind of went in recently. I mean, the brother's about to turn 85 this year. And I think he just said, you know what? I'm Quincy Jones. And I don't give a. Because this man, when you talk about like spilling the tea and just spilling everyone's secrets, I don't think it gets any more crazy than this interview that Vulture did with Quincy Jones. I mean, he goes in. I want to read through just some of the highlights here. So if you don't know, they open up with giving us a quick introduction to who Quincy Jones is. In both music and manner, Quincy Jones is always registered, from afar anyway, as smooth, sophisticated, and impeccably well connected. That's what earning 28 Grammy Awards and co producing Michael Jackson's biggest selling album will do. But in person, the 84-year-old music industry mache is far spikier and more complicated. And yeah, that's putting it lightly. I mean, if let's just jump right into this interview. So he talks about work with Michael Jackson, and he pretty much paints Michael Jackson in the most negative light that I've ever really heard anyone paint Michael Jackson. He calls him greedy here. He talks about how, basically the drugs, the propofol was what did him in. Goes on to talk about, things about why Michael Jackson was getting plastic surgery, which was rooted from his father. Michael Jackson's father continued calling him ugly and abusing him, um, which I think for the most part a lot of us knew things like that. But then, he starts to talk about how he's friends with the Clintons, and how when he hung out with the Clintons when they were in the White House, a big pharmaceutical had so much influence. And it keeps going. He talks about how, Hillary Clinton's got secrets, and when you keep secrets, they backfire. I mean, this is what he's literally saying to this interviewer. And then he'll say things like, "This is something else I shouldn't be talking about." So he knows more than what he's telling us here. I know too much, man. He knows too much. When asked who killed Kennedy, he gives a straight answer: a Chicago mobster. Apparently, this is a theory that's out there. I had no idea. I thought it was who's the guy, Lee Harvey Oswald. Apparently, that's not true. Apparently, Quincy Jones knows who truly killed Kennedy. Continuing down, he starts to then go into what artists he likes and he doesn't like, and what he thinks about rock music, which he clearly says. He says rock music ain't nothing but a white version of rhythm and blues, throwing the MF word out there. He talks about how the Beatles are basically crap. I mean, that I've never seen such candid responses from uh, anyone in the entertainment industry. Um, but Quincy Jones just literally goes, and I just want to keep scrolling down here. What one good thing he did talk about? One of the interview asked, so you hang out in these elite social circles, and doing good has always been important to you. But are you seeing as much concern for the poor as you'd like? And so this is where Quincy, I think he gets real serious. He says, no, the rich aren't doing good enough. They don't care. I come from the street and I care about these kids who don't have enough because I feel I'm one of them. These other people don't know what it feels like to be poor, so they don't care. And then he continues, are we in a better place as a country? And he says pretty much flat out no. We're the worst we've ever been, but that's what we're seeing from people when we try and fix it. He talks about feminism and fighting racism. Um, the interviewer asked, we've obviously been learning more lately about just how corrosive the entertainment industry can be for women. Does any of it come as a surprise? And he says no. And then he gets asked about Bill Cosby, and basically he has to say, I can't talk about that in public either. Of course, him and Bill Cosby are good friends. Um, but yeah, he just stays tight-lipped. But obviously, he knows when he's asked if the allegations surprise him. We can't talk about this in public, man. Like what? How does he? What? What does he know? Obviously, he's got contacts with like pretty much everybody in the industry. I mean, he's Quincy Jones, so he knows more than he should. He's probably like the ringleader of the Illuminati. He's probably the one behind every he's in the Stonecutters. I'm pretty sure of it. He's the one that put the metric system down in the U.S. He made Steve Gutenberg a star. It's Quincy Jones. It's the reason why the world spins. It's Quincy Jones, and he knows everything, and it's kind of crazy. So he says he gets asked if you can snap your fingers and fix one problem in the country, what would it be? And Quincy says racism, and I'd agree with that. I truly agree with that. I would do the same. He says, I've been watching it for a long time, the 30s till now, which I'm not sure when. I'm trying to do the math here. He couldn't have been born in the 30s, could he? If he's 80 now? I'm not going to try to do the math. It's too late for me. But he says the South has always been effed up, but at least you know where you stand. And basically, he's saying that when you're in the South, you know that you're going to be in a racist place. But the racism in the North is disguised. You never know where you stand. That's why what's happening now is good because people are saying they are racist who didn't used to say it, and that's what we're seeing from the. I mean, just look everywhere from the protests in Charlottesville and so on. We're seeing people more than ever being more blatant and more upfront about where they stand on race relations, sexual relations, gay, lesbian, transgender relations. And of course, the interviewer asks, what stirred everything up? And of course, that everyone's going to respond. It's Trump. He also has uneducated rednecks. And then he goes on to say that he used to date Ivanka Trump, Trump's daughter. And I'm just like, wait, what? That like how did nobody know this? He says it was 12 years ago. Tommy Hilfiger. He just keeps throwing out these big names. So he's talking about Trump, and he says, "Oh yeah, I dated Ivanka. Oh yeah, Tommy Hilfiger set us up." Basically saying Ivanka came up to Tommy and said, or Tommy came up to Quincy saying Ivanka wants to have dinner with you, and I said no, and he said no problem, and then he goes on to talk about how beautiful she is. I won't go through that, but I'm like, what? How? How? Where? So anyway, he asked if Oprah would be good for president. He says no, she shouldn't run. You have to be a governor or of a state or a CEO, which the interviewer says, well, Oprah is a CEO, and then he says a symphony conductor knows more about how to lead than most business people. So basically, he just punked Oprah, like unlike anything I've ever seen before, and at the same time punks Trump as well. But yeah, this interview is just pretty crazy. Talks about you too. And then they kind of start to talk more about music. So they actually talk about things. This is a good one where they ask, is rap, what does he think about rap? And he basically, says rap, it, it, it it's like the dumbest music, pretty much. If I can synthesize what he said, it's especially rap today. It's the same four bars repeated over and over again, and it basically says it's pretty much not music. And I'd have to agree. It's just ridiculous where music is today. But yeah, I don't want to waste too much more time on this because I know I'm getting up to my 10-minute mark. But if you get a chance, go to Vulture and just check out this interview. Again, a lot of it where he does actually start to talk about music more is really good. Just he gets into a lot of some of his inspirations, where he sees music going, and things like that. So that's pretty much towards like the middle, and to the end, and then towards the end, he kind of gets back into, well, here's a good one. So he talks about who's doing good work. He brings up Bruno Mars, Chance the Rapper, and Kendrick Lamar, as well as Ed Sheeran and Sam Smith. All I would agree with that completely. But then, yeah, he talks about lazy music. Listen to the music. These guys don't know what they're doing. He pretty much lays into producers, saying that they're lazy. Just all sorts of things. And so yeah, again, check it out if you get a chance. I feel like there was one more area that he talked about. He talks about carrying a gun. How he had a breakdown on The Color Purple because it was pretty much him trying to produce the music for a whole 1 hour and 55-minute film by himself, and that pretty much burned him out and caused him all this anxiety. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting. It's a very tell all. So here's the big one. The big one, and I may have passed it already, but he talks about. Oh man, did I pass it? I think I passed it. I'm just gonna look for it. He talks about Marlon Brando, and it's this one's crazy. I think this is what's kind of taking the internet by storm. But basically, it said Marlon Brando used to go cha-cha dancing with us. He could dance his butt off. He was the most charming guy you could ever meet. And then he says he'd f anything, anything, and he names names: James Baldwin, Richard Pryor, and Marvin Gaye. And so that caused the internet to just go in an uproar because everyone's like, wait, what? So again, I don't know how, obviously Quincy is like he was in like everyone's circles. He knew everything that was happening in Hollywood. And yeah, he's probably at the top of the house of cards there in Hollywood. So I'm interested to know, what other people's thoughts are. Please take a look at this article. It's long, but it's got so many revealing details about people's lives and personal lives that yeah, your jaw, you'll just be like for the whole thing. Switching gears, moving on. Wanted to talk about this beautiful. I don't even know. And Black Twitter, of course, was outraged. Queen Nefertiti, the Egyptian queen, was there was a statue or a bust of her that was revealed yesterday on the Today Show, and well, let's just go into it. So Josh Gates, who's promoting his new special on the Egyptian Queen Nefertiti, stopped by the Today Show to show off a newly completed bust of Nefertiti based on the DNA remains of the HBIC, which, if you don't know, stands for the head be in charge. Unfortunately, Mr. Gates in the Today Show Unfortunately for Mr. Gates and the Today Show, their Twitter mentions were flooded when Black Twitter saw a clip of the unveiling, and something seemed a little off. So here's a quick clip. Yes, I'll agree to your terms. And people are like, that's, no, that's a European woman. That's a woman of European descent. That's not an African descented or a woman of African descent at all. And I find it really interesting that this would come out now with Black Panther about to come out. Because everyone says that Black Panther and T'Challa is like he's the king, the rightful king, and maybe this is Josh's way of getting back at us to say, you know what, you can have your imaginary king. I'm going to take away your real, African queen. But I just feel like this is just complete whitewashing. This is like watching Ben Hur and what's the Ten Commandments, and just seeing the whitest people, or movies like Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, and just seeing all Caucasians playing people that are obviously of Arab and of North African descent. They should have way more melanin than this. Queen Nefertiti did not look like this. And this guy's just smiling as he reveals it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to completely change history. And he does it smack dab in the middle of Black History Month. Like, this is a slap in the face. So, of course, Black Twitter went off. So again, they're gonna try to tell us that Nefertiti was white during the blackest month of the year. Just look at this. How do you come up with this? Melanin deficient Queen Nefertiti bust revealed. So I was obviously astounded. This is our African Queen Nefertiti. Not buying it, not one bit. I think this guy needs to go back to the drawing board, re-examine. I love this quote. One of my white friends said, "So Kristen Wiig is Nefertiti." I almost died when I read that. And of course, here's a reaction, some reaction. Yes, Twitter, I agree. Um, yeah, that was pretty much makes you want to just get up and walk away. So this guy needs to go back to the drawing board and really figure out, what he's doing with his life, how he came to this conclusion that, based on his DNA results, this is what Queen Nefertiti looked like. On the flip side, going to another article, this just released today. So while Queen Nefertiti was white, apparently the first British people were black. So I really don't know what's happening right now. But in this article, so again, here's another reconstruction. Um, they were black with like blue eyes and curly hair. So a DNA sample. So again, some more DNA samples, which I feel like, DNA is supposed to be like the definitive, hey, this is how we can check. We can look at the genome and DNA sequences and figure it out. But maybe someone's just screwing with these guys. Anyway, a DNA sample from a 10,000-year-old skeleton discovered in Gow Cave, if I'm pronouncing that right, near Cheddar Gorge, England, offers a remarkable revelation. The first modern British people had dark brown to black skin. So basically, if I'm to believe this, the blacks were the original Europeans and the whites were the original Egyptians. And maybe somewhere in there we decided to like trade places and the whites moved to Europe and the blacks took Africa. Maybe there was like some war like 9,000 years ago where they decided, hey, you know what? Let's move to Africa because we like the sun more, and you pale people can all go in Europe where there's not a lot of sun, you won't burn and things like that. I don't know, but it's just interesting. So according to recent analysis, they also had dark curly hair and blue eyes. In other words, whiteness in Europe is a much newer thing than we thought. The so-called Cheddar Man was a hunter-gatherer during the Mesolithic period, which ended just before the appearance of agriculture. While Britain was populated and abandoned by humans during earlier periods, archaeologists think that humans lived on the island continuously from Cheddar Man's time through to present day. This is part of what makes the details about his appearance so meaningful. Cheddar Man's genome shows that Europeans didn't develop pale skin until a few thousand years ago, rather than tens of thousands of years ago when humans first migrated west onto the European continent. So, if I'm to believe this, that says Europeans didn't develop pale skin until a few thousand years ago. A few thousand years ago is like 2,000 years ago. And if I go back to the last article, I'm pretty sure Queen Nefertiti lived more than a few thousand years ago. So something's not jiving between these two articles. Either the white genome didn't exist and Queen Nefertiti did not look like that, or something is off. So scientists, we need some more definitive answers. Y'all need to help me understand what's happening here, and get history right, because this just ain't gonna fly. Until then, I'm just gonna believe that Nefertiti was black and the first Britons were black and everyone was black to begin with, because everyone pretty much originated from Africa. So even if they weren't black, we were all Africans. Everyone originated from Africa. I'm gonna leave it there. So anyway, the last thing I want to talk about with like my final 2 minutes is this story, this terrible story about the upstanding Cornell University, which we all know Andrew Bernard attended. And right now he's probably like just pissed about this. I hope he wasn't part of this fraternity. But apparently this fraternity, Zeta Beta Tau, has been placed on a probationary recognition following university reports of something called a pig roast. And the details of this are ridiculously disgusting. So Cornell fraternity responds to university report of pig roast contest awarding points for sex. Disgusting. So Cornell's Zeta Beta Tau fraternity has been placed on probationary recognition after the university found that it was conducting a pig roast in which new members could accumulate points by engaging in sexual intercourse with women. Now, I'm sure by no means this is new in the fraternity or even sorority circles and universities across America. I was watching a Vice video on YouTube just a few days ago that talked about some of the ridiculous hazing activities that happened at Penn State University that I attended, where I believe it was last year. A student actually died. They had like 18 cans of beer or something, and they passed out on the couch, and you know the party kept on going until the next morning when other students at this fraternity house realized that this kid hadn't gotten up, and they finally called the police to get this guy you know wheeled out or whatever. But so fraternities have an issue. It's a continuing issue, and so this one is just like just the lowest of the low. There's also, if you haven't seen what's that movie called? It's oh man, I'm forgetting about it. But basically, it's about the fraternity that had the party where people were dressed in blackface and it got busted. I can't remember the name of it. Someone will tell me. But anyway, the new members were instructed not to inform the women of the contest. And in the case of the tie, the member who has sex with a woman who weighed the most won, according to an investigation conducted by the university's fraternity and sorority review board that was conducted last month. So hence the name pig roast. It's a derogatory term, basically awarding these men points for having sex with the largest women that would allow them to have sex with them, and this was their hazing technique for these young men. The report said the contest occurred in 2017, but did not specify who was involved or for how long the contest ran. The brothers were made aware of the allegations in December before a hearing with the review board. So we're led to believe from this article that not all of the members of Zeta, Beta, Tau, whatever the ZBT stands for, I'm pretty sure it's that, we're led to believe that not every member even knew about this. And I'm calling complete BS. There's no way that the hazing is going on and not everybody knows about it. So the vice president for student and campus life, Ryan Lombardi, said ZBT's behavior is abhorrent to me and anti-ethical to our values as a community. Its behavior that degrades and dehumanizes women contributes to a climate and culture of intolerance for sexual violence, Lombardi followed on. In response to the report, ZBT released a formal statement saying that these events were not chapter sanctioned activities, nor ones that brothers were aware of. So, how? How, Sway? How were brothers not aware of this? This is a blatant lie. They were aware of this. These guys are aware of every hazing activity that happens. Otherwise, they're trying to cover themselves. The release also said that the allegations described are contrary to the values that Zeta Beta Tau fraternity espouses and works in direct conflict with the beliefs and missions of the Kappa chapter. Sure, it does. You know, you say what you have to say to make sure that you can get by when things like this happen. But I'm going to tell you, every story that we hear about fraternities, yes, they do a lot of good, but there is a seedy dark side to all these fraternities, especially when it comes to hazing. And I feel like we only know like the tip of the iceberg for what these fraternities and with sororities. It's just crazy. So anyway, ZBT will be on probational recognition for 2 years and must fulfill other requirements, including a full chapter brotherhood and external review by its national organization. They also have to participate in programs like Sexual Assault Awareness Week and Cornell's Bystander Intervention Program. The statement confirmed the chapter's intentions of following through with these requirements, stating this inexcusable behavior will not be tolerated. And so I'll end it with that. But it just really sad, ridiculous. I hope that things like this continue to be exposed because I feel like a university environment should, one, be a place of inclusion and transparency. And from what we're seeing, I wanna bring up the things like the Sandusky trial and now Larry Nassar's case. Universities seem like they're the most corrupt places right now, where there are fraternities, and then between fraternities and sports organizations, those are the most glorified institutions within the institution of a university. and they are just allowed to do whatever they well please. And there need to be serious changes to the culture in universities, and it needs to happen swiftly. More than what's happening in Hollywood, because here's what's happening. You have people like this that go to these universities, that do the hazing, that think that this is acceptable. They form this brotherhood, and then they move that brotherhood out into the real world, where they then start affecting and infecting, real women and real people, and it's disgusting. And things like with Penn State and Michigan State and how they were just able to cover these things up, it's disgusting. And even with like the there was a story last year with college basketball and things that were covered up there. It's disgusting. It's a culture of just sports and machismo that needs to come to an end. So I am way past my time. I'm going to end it there. Let me know what you all think. One, about the Quincy Jones article, then about what the heck is going on with Queen Nefertiti, and what I can't explain that still. As well as the first Brits being black, and then finally what needs to be done with universities, and how are they going to clean up a lot of this stuff that's happening with fraternities and with the just the whole institution of sports like football and basketball. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to sleep. Goodbye.